Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me on this summer creative retreat with Peggy Dean. My name is Illyahna. I am a modern calligrapher and lettering artist. I'm based in Oxford. I am going to be taking you through a taster into modern flourishing techniques for calligraphy. We're going to be going through tips and tricks that I've learned along the way, things that I think will help you to improve, to develop your flourishing techniques. So this again is a taster course. And I just want to mention that if you want to continue on with your development into flourishing, I have a brilliant new workshop that's coming up at the end of August. Now I've provided you with a tools list, sheets, all sorts. There's a live link in your PDF. If you click that link, it will take you directly to my workshop happening at the end of August. So I just have to say, if you guys could follow me, because the more support the better, and you can find me here. This is my website at www.illyboodesigns.com, and also on Instagram I'm illyboodesigns. So I'm raring to get started. I hope you guys are. I've been really looking forward to this style of workshop and I can't wait to see you in class. Thanks again. Hey guys, okay, thanks so much again for joining me on my taster tutorial into modern flourishing for calligraphy. So I'm going to take you through a couple of the tips and tricks I've learnt along the way, things I've developed to just kind of help me with my flourishing style. So I'm really hoping that the simple tips will help you to think about your style further and get a bit more involved in flourishing. So we're learning how to develop it, where to place flourishing basically. So what I'm going to start with is the tools that we need to be using for this tutorial. So I have obviously provided you with a list of tools, but I really recommend that we start with the smaller tipped brush pens, and these being the Tombow Fudenosuke pens and the Pentel brush sign pen, or touch pen as it's also known. Also, I'd grab a pencil. I tend to use a pilot pencil. If you also don't have any of the small tip brush pens, you can use a larger tip brush pen. You'll just need a bit more paper because you're going to have to go a little bit bigger with your flourishing. So paper choices for me, these are some of my favourites. So I like to use layout paper. There's a translucency to this paper. It's nice and smooth as well, and it's really good for copying, putting things under and copying stuff on top when you're doing your flourishing. I also like tracing paper, so that's another option. Again, you can see straight through tracing paper. It's very smooth and it's a really good one to help you with developing your technique. So I'll show you how that works a bit later. And then my go-to Rhodia, which I love, dot pad in particular, but you can use plain or any other kind. Again, there's a slight translucency to this paper, and also it's incredibly smooth. So any of those, including if you have HP copy paper, smooth paper, that's absolutely fine to use. So anything that you can grab, that's easy enough for you to get a hand to grab, and whatever you like to use basically. Okay, perfect. So hopefully you've grabbed your pen, whichever you've decided to use for today. So I'm using the Pentel brush touch sign pen. It's just one of my favourites. Now, when it comes to doing flourishing, you can use either your pen to start with or a pencil. So either is fine to use. It's just a case of us warming up our hands and trying to get into the flow. So I've created some flourishing specific warm-ups just for you to try out today. And basically, if anyone has not used a brush pen before, the general rules around it is that you have to hold it more at a 45-degree angle. That's just because you're trying to get as much as you can out of the lovely tip of the pen when you go to do your lovely thick down strokes, which are these strokes. And then obviously you want a light touch when you're doing your up strokes. So you want to try and angle your hand on the paper. Now for flourishing, you want to keep things light. You're looking to create nice rounded oval loops, that's the general rule. And to try and cross, when you are doing crosses on your loops and your stems of your strokes, to keep it at about a 90-degree angle. So that's what you're trying to aim for. Now, it's just a really good idea to do multiples of these to just get your hand warmed up. And I particularly like horizontal loops and the S loops for this. So I give myself roughly about maybe half an hour of experimenting with loops and ovals and styles just to get me kind of warmed up and ready to start my proper practice. So the way I tackle it is to keep everything very light on the paper when I'm thinking about flourishing. And that's what you're generally going for. So as I said, light to touch, and you're just playing with the swoopiness, the swashing of those loops. And as I was mentioning, trying to keep them quite ovally and rounded where you can. So I'll show you the horizontal loop. That's quite a fun exercise because it's all about balance, and sometimes it goes a little wrong, but it's actually good because it's getting you to warm up and practice and feel out the pressure that you're placing on those strokes. So I would give those a really good go, like I said, for about half an hour. Just keep practicing the ovals and obviously the crossing of these loops and the S loops. They're really great ones. So carry on with that practice. Okay, so as mentioned, we're going to start to take a look at how we can add flourishes onto our lettering. So the main areas to focus on are your entry strokes, as indicated, and your exit strokes, and also on your crossbars. So a lot of what we did in the warm-up exercise will help you to start to see how you can incorporate some of those styles into the lettering. So the best areas I would start with anyway, if you're a beginner, is the entry and exit. So you start to kind of form a bit more expression, you start to get more of a feel of how you want your words, the flourishing of your letters on the beginning and the ends to start to take shape. And you're looking at like forming natural extensions and really nice sweeping lines. So it's just really important to have a play. And when it comes to flourishing, there's no hard and fast rule. It's a case of experimenting and just taking the shaping and enjoying it and playing with it basically. And you're bound to go wrong along the way, but that's the whole part of the process, if you know what I mean. So, for instance, if I'm going to be using my pencil for this, if I'm taking my S for my start, there are various ways I can think about embellishing that stroke. So instead of taking the entry stroke from the top of the letter, I've decided to put it across the bottom. So when you are considering flourishing, you don't have to stop there either. You can extend that line out and consider what else you'd like to do. So I'm creating another loop down the bottom of that letter. And again, we're applying that same rule to the D. So again, you stop at a point and then figure out like what direction you want to take that flourish in. So the one that I've done, I've just copied that one right here. I have pulled that up and around. But you might decide you want to come from a different direction depending on the space that you've got around that letter. So those are just the general rules to think about when you are starting to embellish or create a little bit more flair and interest to your wording. Okay guys, so we're going to give it a go whereby we take what we've just learnt with the exit and the entry strokes and the crossbars, and we're going to try and put it together in some basic words that I've provided. So as you'll see on the sheets I've provided, I've also given you indications of lots of ways of embellishing your lettering. And as I said, the main areas you want to be focusing on are your descenders, which are the bottom extensions of your letters, the ascenders, which are the tops, and then your entry and exits, and also your crossbars. So we're just going to take our two letters, and what I tend to do is I'll either start with my pencil and I'll start thinking about ways I want to include these sorts of embellishments and flows to my lettering with my flourishes. So at this point it's about getting creative. It's about also creating balance. We don't want to do too many things or have too much going on, so you don't want overkill going on here, because it can get a little bit difficult to obviously then read the word. And if you get too embellished around the ends of the letters, sometimes they can end up turning into or start looking like letters themselves. So you need to experiment a little bit with how things, your flourishing is going to form and how you're developing it. So what I like to do is take a piece of tracing paper at this stage, and sometimes it's a little bit more forgiving because you can place your tracing paper over your word like so and start to think about the directions of your flourishes. So it just gives you an opportunity to start practicing and playing around, and if you don't like it, you move it over like so and you start again. So as I mentioned, you're kind of like looking at ways as well you can incorporate some of your flourishes into other letters. You're looking at elongating your crossbars, as I showed in the example on the guide sheet, and you're just being more creative with generally your letters and just playing with the space. So we're really looking to fill right now the negative space around our letters. And again, like I said, you're just taking different shapes and loops that we had practiced before with the warm-up exercises, and you're incorporating those into your wording. Now, a good rule is to try and keep your flourishing to the ends, the crossbars of your letters. When you start to apply it in the middle, you have to just be a little bit careful about how many flourishes you are incorporating. Now, I have shown you quite a few, obviously, on here. I don't expect you to put them all in. And also, when you start combining words together, so that's what we're going to be doing with the movement and the flow later to develop a nice little phrase, you want to consider where you are placing some of those flourishes, and you might need to take some of them away. So this is just a really nice exercise to do for yourself, and it just takes a little bit of time. So consider, like I was saying before, how you want some of your ascenders to become more embellished whilst keeping it readable, obviously. So I'm going to take that W and pull that round. So if I just move that off, you'll see how it's starting to come together. And again, it's looking at ways, like I was saying, of using the space that you have. So I have a bit of a play and see how you get on, and experiment, and just use a piece of paper up. You know, just try it a couple times on a piece of tracing paper, or if you don't have that, like I said, layout paper. If you want to, you can go straight on top of your lettering and start applying your flourishing embellishment. Okay, so great. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off using my pencil to gauge a kind of the idea of like where I want to place my word. And also with the flow of my flourishes, sometimes they can go off in different directions and I might not necessarily want or like where it's taking off. So it's just a good idea to lightly pencil out the wording on the paper and then you can go over with your brush pen. So what I'm doing here, I'm just getting a feel for where I want that bottom descending flourish to go. It's just important you don't do it too high as it might then hit the tops, or the bottom should I say, of your other letters. So I really like where that's placed in position. So now I'm going to consider, okay, well, I'm going to add my and in. So I'm using that flourish and I'm looking at the relationships between the words and thinking again about the spacing. So quite like how that loop's come out. It's not kind of hitting too many of the other loops around this area and it still looks quite clean. So now I've got this bit of space here. This is a bit of negative space right there and obviously around here. So I'm going to consider how I want to place my F flourishes and obviously the exit stroke of the W. So do I want it to go round like so? I might change that. Just have a bit of a play. Do something more like that and have it tail off. So I've just slightly changed it, but as I'm going, I'm constantly looking at, I'm taking a step back. So I'm constantly looking at where I like to see the flourish shape. So I might even make that a little bit bigger or change that a little bit, just so that it sort of matches. So again, you're just experimenting and playing. And then once you feel happy, you can then take your brush pen and go over your pencil markings. Okay guys, so what I've done is I've just changed my paper. I've gone to a plain white piece of paper just to do my final version. I've sketched it up in pencil. So you've got nice light outline, and then I'm going to go over it with my Pentel Touch. Now, what to consider is just obviously, as you go along, take a step back every so often because it's really important. Sometimes you might change your flourish as you're doing it, and then that can change the rest of the placement and filling out the space around these letters. So just bear that in mind. So I'll try and talk you through it a little bit as I do it. Okay, so sometimes, which is what's happened here, it's my flourish on my descender has hit the top of the bottom of my T. So sometimes it's just trying to keep that, like elongate that out a little bit more and bring it further down. And you're constantly coming back, like looking, or, taking a step back, should I say, just making sure that your placement of things is where you obviously want it, and you're looking at, again, the negative space around that word. So I'm wanting to fill in those bits. Okay, so there we have it. I think that's turned out pretty well. Sometimes I do this a couple of times because I might not be happy with the placement, and again, that's just something that you need to experiment with, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're not going to hit it perfectly the first time round, but I generally like that. It's readable. I might go back in and change a couple of the directions of the loops, but I kept the and a little bit less flourished because I didn't want it hitting into this. There's a lot going on here at the moment. So yeah, I hope that's helped. This was just a quick taster tutorial just to give you a bit of a better idea of what I do, how I attempt my flourishing, what's worked for me along the way, and I hope this has really helped you to start thinking about ways to develop yours and exploring ideas and just enjoying the process as well. So yeah, thanks again guys for joining. It's so lovely to have you here with me for today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your time. Thanks.